Well, welcome to the interview chair brought to you by Canine Chronicle TV and Pro Plan. This week on the chair, we have Jason Hoke. So sit back and listen to Jason for about an hour, and I'm sure you'll find him interesting. Hi, everybody. Will here with this week's interview chair brought to you by the Canine Chronicle TV and Pro Plan. This week on the chair, we have none other than Jason Hoke. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing good, Will. How about you?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you. I didn't see you that long ago. I saw you a few weeks ago at our show.
Yeah, it wasn't too long.
But you're keeping busy.
Yeah, I've been judging a lot, and that keeps me pretty busy. And then my restaurant and bar, so yeah, no rest for the weary. So it's all good,
I'm
though.
sure.
I love it.
What's the weather like up there right now? Because you're further north than me. So
It's a little cool, but it's not too bad. We had just a really light dusting of snow, but that'll go away, and then it'll be 80 degrees and then snow again. So it goes back and forth.
That's what we're going through right now too. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get started. Tell me how you got started in our crazy sport and how old you were when you started.
Well, my parents always had show dogs. The first dogs that I really got involved with were the shepherds way back in the 70s. And we had them for a while. We went to only specialty shows, so we had kind of the specialty variety, if you want to call it that. And then eventually we saw a Great Dane at a match show, and that really sparked our interest in the breed. And my first two Great Danes were two brindle litter mates, a dog and a bitch. So that's where I really got my start.
How old were you then when you got the Danes?
I think maybe 8.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty young.
Okay, where do we go from there?
Well, the whole time I was showing Great Danes, I always was interested in other breeds as well. So I think, back in the day, if you showed a Great Dane, you were there all day because there was 100 or so, and judging took all day. But I was always kind of pulled towards other breeds and kind of wanted to learn how to show them and a little more. So my interest kind of always was broadening from just my own breed to other breeds. So I started to work for some professional handlers when I was really young, like Bobby Fowler with the Dachshunds. And eventually my mom started breeding some dogs with Jane Fowler. So, I just always wanted to learn other breeds. So I kind of went from there. And then I decided that, I was always taught the best way to learn new breeds is to go apprentice for a handler. So I moved to California to go to college, and I worked for an all-breed handler for quite a few years. And then one of the breeds... What's that?
Who did you work for?
Leroy Stage.
Okay.
And so he showed a lot of Ridgebacks, a lot of Siberians, Portuguese water dogs, Tibetan terriers, just kind of whippets, showed quite a few whippets. And then after I left working for him, I thought I had a little deficiency in, my knowledge base. So I thought I want to learn terriers. So I went to work for Wood Warnall for a while to learn terriers as well. So, I just always wanted to learn all the different breeds, and
Sure.
So I just kind of kept moving through the ranks.
No, were you out of college at this point, or are you still going to college?
I had finished. Okay. Yeah. So I was working for Leroy for maybe 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And then Woody for at least 2 or 3, I think. So
yeah.
Yeah, I was always taught you paid your dues, and to pay your dues, you learn your trade, no matter what it is, whether it's dog shows or something else. And you can't just go right into it as a kid and say, I know how to show a dog,
No,
and care for dogs and trim
it
them.
happens, but it's not the
Yeah,
best
it's not the right
outcome.
path. Yeah, sometimes it goes a little awry for the kids that aren't prepared yet. So
Exactly.
and you see it all when you're working for somebody. The health and well-being of the dogs is so important, and there's a lot to learn, and each breed has its own unique issues that can come up while you're traveling. So
No
yeah,
question.
I think it's
So
really
so you worked for Woody until about what? How old were you when you left Woody?
probably early 2000s, maybe. Yeah, probably, I would say. And then I moved in with David Fitzpatrick, so then I, certainly became more more involved with toy breeds. And that
So you
was
started handling basically on your own with David at that point.
yeah, that was really when I sort of went out my own, and I was showing all breeds, and David really specialized in a lot of the toy and non-sporting breeds. So it was interesting. I wanted to learn. I didn't know anything about drop coats. I never worked for anybody that really, other than Tibetans, which are cared for a little different. And I told David I wanted to learn Maltese, and there was this little bitch in an X pen, and I said, "What's her story?" And because I wanted to learn from the beginning and know how to grow a dog out. And she was cut down, and I said, "Was she a champion?" He said, "No, she had a little injury, and so we cut her down. We're not showing her anything." And I said, "Well, can I grow her out?" And so I started learning how to wrap and grow the coat and everything. And 2 years later, she won the national specialty. So it was a good pick. I was proud of myself. So
I'm sure.
yeah, it was a great introduction to drop coated breeds and Maltese. So, and I did a lot of work with Maltese through the years, and bred her with the breeder, and picked the stud dogs, and she produced another best in show winning dog. So yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, like I think I remember when you were with David, excuse me, and I remember you had Harry the Beardy. I think you had a pointer as well, didn't you?
I did. I had a really nice pointer. Oh God, what was her name? She was an Aldar bitch, and she did quite a bit of winning, and then Marjorie Martorella gave her a best in show, which she's a tough nut to crack in pointers.
Yeah, in pointers, that's for sure.
Yeah, she has a very defined eye, so it was she gave her one of her first bests, so that was really a proud moment with her. And yeah, so I had the Beardy from Canada, which was he the top dog in Canada at one point?
Harry, was he top dog? He may have been. I don't remember. He was a beauty though. I remember that.
Yeah,
so.
He was such a great dog, and so smart and intelligent, and he had his quirks. So Julie and me didn't teach me all the quirks right away that they had taught him. He liked Happy Birthday. He barked before Best in Show was awarded, which I didn't know about. So his first best in show was won with him barking incessantly, and I didn't know how to stop him because I was like, "Oh, what's happening?" And Harry barked a lot. he was such a smart dog, He had his ways, and you just kind of rode it out with him. Yeah, I love that dog.
And so when you started, obviously, Woody would have been a mentor, and David would have been a huge mentor. Did you have other mentors that you had that you didn't work for that were very impactful on you?
Well, I think in my own breed, Great Danes, I had quite a few. The kennel that I really started with in the beginning was Mount Dania Kennel. It was Anna Mary and Amos Kaufman, and they were very famous Great Dane breeders for many, many years. They had over 100 champions back in the day. I mean, in the 80s, they had already bred 100 champions, which, is nigh onto impossible for a great
exactly.
Yeah. And they taught me quite a bit. There was Don and Mary Lou Carmody from the Midwest that were Great Dane breeders, and they kind of co-bred with Anna Mary, and they taught me a lot. Don Carmody had me up on the hill teaching me how to show Great Danes when I was a little kid and at the Mount Dania kennels. And
how did you do that? Like even though I was
hard.
Oh, I'm sure, because even when I was an adult, Great Danes are a hard breed to show. I give my hat off to Great Dane handlers because they move those dogs and manipulate them in a way that doesn't look like they're being manipulated,
Right.
and they end up with this outline that's phenomenal. So.
Yeah, it was a challenge as a youth because, back then I was still showing in junior showmanship, and yeah, that was when we had to run around the dogs because you couldn't block the judge, and they were doing tees in the ring, and
here you are with this Great Dane.
Yeah, that was longer than my arms were. So, everybody can be so graceful if they have even a Springer or something like that. And here I am, this little kid and trying to run around a Great Dane. You kind of look like a lunatic when you were doing it. So I switched to Lhasas in junior showmanship for a while.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah.
A Lhasa breeder gave me a Lhasa to show, and I did quite well with her. So, yeah. You had to mix
but I imagine learning on a breed such as Great Dane gave you so many tools in your toolbox to use in other breeds.
Yeah, I think it really, because it's such a big breed, and if something's wrong or you have to mold a dog into a certain shape, you really learn structure and anatomy and how to manipulate that without the judge seeing it, things like
for
that.
sure. I watch them, and then it's almost like they step into it and they lean into it. They do all kinds of different things, and they might move one leg, and the dog is done.
Yeah, they can fall real quick if they're not built well. So, yeah, it was a good learning experience, and it really translated well to other breeds too, because I think if you can show a giant breed really well, you've got pretty good hands then.
I agree. I agree. My hat's off. So Wood would have been your terrier mentor. What did you take from that experience from working with Wood?
Well, obviously learning the different ways you trim the different types of terrier coats. We had a lot of wires there. They bred wires, and we also had a lot of Kerry Blues that we trimmed. So I got to learn that, which is a little different.
Yeah.
Skill set, of course, than the broken coated breeds, and then they had dandies, so that's a different type of coat. We had border terriers, so it was really good because I got to get my hands on all those. And I showed some terriers. I showed some dogs for Rick and Kathy Regis after I left Woody, and that was a great experience too. But I've never been given that opportunity without learning that, of course, because
right.
Nobody's going to give you a terrier if you don't know how to, to show and trim it. I mean, yeah. I don't know why any judge is allowed to judge the terrier group if they've never at least been to a kennel and seen dogs trimmed. And because if you don't understand that, I don't know how you can judge a terrier.
Oh, exactly.
You have to understand what stage their coats are in. And, it's funny. I was with a judge one time, a month before Montgomery, and she was so upset because the dogs were kind of short coated. And I was like, well, Montgomery's coming up. They're not, the dogs that they took down to the skin, they're like 3/4 back in coat, but they're not in perfect coat. Well, they're going to be in perfect coat in a couple weeks. So, and I think it helps you understand the stages of where a dog is, and also when it's just not in good condition and what's incorrect. So,
and the sheer work that goes into those breeds to have them done properly, you have to give those handlers and breeders their due to show those dogs in that kind of condition to you consistently.
Yeah, I mean, you see dogs that Gabriel puts down, and Bill and Tracy, all these handlers, and they're just, there's so many hours into one dog, let alone a string of dogs. I mean, it's right. It's a lot of work. The first dog I had to trim ever was an Airedale. And
that's a lot of acreage.
That's a lot of dog, and I felt so bad for the dog because my skill at that time was none. So the poor dog had to suffer through me learning to trim him. So
yeah, I trimmed a lot of those as well. And I think I had rotator cuff surgery because of Airedales.
Of course. Of course. It's a lot of dog with a lot of hair, and and it, especially starting them from scratch and tearing them down from the skin and stuff on stage one. It's a lot of work.
But it's amazing the people that don't realize the stages. I'll be chatting with somebody and I'll try to tell them how they should be staging their Cairn Terrier or their Schnauzer, and they have no idea what I'm talking about.
No,
And
I know it's a
and
shame.
it's unfortunate because it's going to hold them back until they learn that, until they reach out and try to learn how to do those things properly. But
Yeah, and then and then the ultimate skill is if you're going to campaign a dog is keeping it in a good coat, even if it doesn't have a good coat. Keeping that rolling and not letting it blow and just be in bad condition. Then it's that part's hard too. Once you get it there, is keeping it there.
I think your experience with terriers is probably helped you a lot in other judging, just because knowing when dogs are in condition and they're not in condition, because it's part of it.
I think you take all of the things you learn as an assistant, and it's certainly helped me get through a lot of my judging. You fall back on little comments that, and what, not even just with the people I work for, but, the actual breeders I interacted with, and they would talk about, the way the dogs grow. And, we get these young dogs in and you go, oh, is that, what about this? And they're like, oh no, that settles in. And this comes along at this age. So you kind of learn the growth stages too, showing all these young dogs and older dogs. I mean, it makes a big difference because, seeing a champion in your ring is much different than judging, a 5-year-old Gordon versus a 6-month-old Gordon setter. They don't look the same. They're not the same thing, but you have to recognize when that 6-month-old is better than the fleshed out 4-year-old, so it's a challenge. I mean, and I think that's what you learn so much from, is seeing all these different dogs. And I think the handler judges get a bad rep, but we have our hands on so many more dogs than maybe even a breeder has an opportunity to. And there's no replacing a breeder judge, but it gives us maybe a little more open view of breeds.
I think you're right. I think it puts a different perspective on it for how we look at dogs. Like of course we look for the type we want and then the breeding. But I think I still remember showing to Janie one time, and she's going over my dog, and she always liked to chat, and she would say, she'd done it for the dog I was showing. She said, I like this dog, but the dog 2 dogs behind you is the dog I'd want to show if I was still showing dogs.
Yeah, and there's dogs that, as a handler, you'd show and you could win with, maybe even over the better dogs. So as a handler, you have a different mindset. But it's funny when they bring those same dogs into you as a judge, you're like, well, that's not the best dog. That's not the best dog. I mean, it's a very different mindset. So, I think it's interesting. I know what I liked as a handler, and I know, like, toy dogs, how I showed them, how I presented them, and I did them up as fancy as you could. And I don't appreciate that now, because I know what they're supposed to be. I don't need all that fancy stuff being done. So it's a different mindset once you become a judge, for sure.
Oh, yeah, and it's quite a tap dance when you're a handler with certain dogs you get, because you can win with it.
Of course.
But you in your heart what it is, and
right.
It's a tap dance.
You know where you're going to get beaten.
Right.
You can show too that's going to judge, and you have to take those losses too.
Oh, there's no question.
And as a judge, I hope the handlers understand that too. I get that you have the top winning dog, but you should know what can beat you too, because there are dogs that can always beat the top dog sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure there is. For sure there is. So then you from Woody, you went on to David, and you were in partnership with David, but he was still probably a huge mentor for you, especially in the toy group.
Yeah, I mean, I learned everything about Pekingese and Lhasas, Maltese, Yorkies. Showed a ton of Poms, and we showed a lot of toy breeds. So, we'd be at the show with 6 Maltese and 6 Yorkies and a ton of Pekingese. Yeah, so it was a lot of work, but we did well, and David really, of course, was immensely successful, and one of the best Pekingese people in the world, I would say, probably the most winningest of anyone.
Oh, probably. And with any toy that we ever saw him with, he was always a force with. So
yeah, he won nationals with Yorkshire Terriers, and he showed some of the Maltese, and he bred Maltese as well. So yeah,
How long did you two work together?
I think a little over 10 years.
10 years.
10 years, yeah. Yeah, and then I decided to, I wanted to go to culinary school. So I always had an interest in cooking. So I took a break from shows, and I still showed a little bit during school. And I went to culinary school, and I took 3 majors at the culinary school. I did the hotel and restaurant management, I did a pastry one, and I did a catering one. And so I kind of took every course they had all at the same time. And then I got my first job out of there was at the Inn of Washington, which is now a 3 Michelin star restaurant. It was a 5 diamond restaurant before when I worked there. So yeah, that was right into the fire, and you learn real quick. Nothing. It's just like becoming an apprentice. You know nothing.
Sure, yeah.
When you go into a professional kitchen, you think, oh, I can chop, and I can. No, you can't. A professional is a different world. Just like becoming a handler on the first time. There's so much to learn, and you pay your dues. I mean, I did dishes there. I did all the menial prep work. I mean, from chopping so much garlic that it made your hands swell and blister. And so, yeah, it's just.
Well, it's basically the same as an apprentice at a dog show then. So
yeah, I got my calluses in different spots, from, trimming Airedales to holding a chef's knife. It was just a different spot. You get a callus on your hand. So
when did you decide you wanted to start judging?
I started judging, let's see, I think in 2009, I got my license. So about 15 years now? Yeah, I think about.
Yeah. 15. What made you decide? Were you?
I missed the dog shows, and I didn't want to walk away from it completely.
Right.
It's your family. You make so many friends, and all of us that were apprentices at the time, like Tracy and Doug Carlson, Andrew Peel, Amy Thoreau, who passed away. We were all in LA. And so, those people I worked with, I mean, we went out, we did things on our Monday, Tuesday off, because that's the only time you had off, which is nothing different than being a cook. Monday, Tuesday is your day off. So I just missed it. And I thought, I had done so much in the sport. I just wanted to come back and
sure.
And try that out too, and see how it would go and if I liked it.
What did you come back with? What breeds or groups did you start with?
I got 8 breeds to start, so I probably had Great Danes, Peaks, Poms, Maltese, Yorkies, probably Cresteds, and maybe 2 others. I think Dachshunds I started with too, because my mom and I bred Dachshunds together as well. So I just applied for 8 breeds. I didn't get a group or anything in the beginning, and it was a good start. I mean, I think no matter how much you think and how much you're committed to, and the things you say you're never going to do in the ring, you end up doing. You say, I'll never put that dog up. How can somebody do that? Well, you're wrong. You'll do it next week. You'll do it next week. I mean, so you have a lot to learn as a new judge, and every day. I mean, every time I walk in the ring, it's a new challenge, because there's different dogs every day. So you have to rethink everything.
Exactly. And that was a whole different branch. So who would have been your mentor, someone you leaned on at that point in your career?
I think Jackie Stacy was a big mentor to me. She was really kind to me during my beginning with David. She had a very famous Maltese named Ricky, and she gave me Ricky's bows that he did he was a big one. Best in show. Yeah. And when she saw me presenting Maltese, she said, "You do a really good job, and I think you should have my bows from Ricky." So she gave me the bows from Ricky, and really, really talked to me, and kept me on the right track with toy dogs, and gave me a lot of good advice. And I think people like, Janie, she was really good with me in the beginning. Frank Sabella was really good to me in the beginning. He was actually probably one of the kindest, because I was pretty independent when I judged, and there was a day I beat a pretty famous dog to a dog that was unknown at the time, but went on to be the top toy dog of all time. And the handlers and crew that were with the other dog were a little bit dismissive, and Frank just walked right up to him in front of me and said, "That kid's the only one that did the right thing." And it teaches you a lesson that you can do things. You should just do what you think is right in the ring, and some days you're right, some days you're wrong. I mean, I don't make myself out to be the the most correct judge all the time. You get carried away sometimes, and sometimes you really do it right. So you just got to be honest about it. That's how judging is.
Yeah,
So
for
we
sure.
try to do our best every time.
But when you got what was your first group that you got? Was it toys or
Toy,
working?
yeah,
Toys?
toy. I don't even have the working group. I only have
Okay.
2 breeds. Yeah, toy was my first group. I finished that, then I finished non-sporting, or actually, I finished hound next because I always had a passion for the hound breeds. I traveled with Mary Dukes a fair amount when I was in California, and now I've had Whippets for 30 years that I've owned. So I don't breed them, but I've owned them for over 30 years. So had mostly sporting field dogs and Tivio dogs. So yeah, some really nice Whippets. I have Tawny's brother here, who's I think 17 years old.
Oh,
And
wow.
he's doing fine. And, old man's still wandering around. He might come through here later. I don't know. So, yeah. So, so I always love the hound group. I think the hound and the toy group are so detailed because there's, even in like the coon hounds, the differences are so subtle, but really separate each breed. And I really like that detail oriented type judging.
I can tell. I like watching you judge. Discounting dogs that are being shown right now. What dogs? You don't have to even have to have judged them. Just witness them. What dogs have left an imprint on you over the years that you've been involved?
I think one of the most dynamic dogs that I saw before it ever came to the States was Mick, the Kerry Blue. I saw him at Crufts, and I was walking around, and I think I was just starting with David, and so I just left Woody's, and I was walking by the Kerry Blue ring, and I was like, "What is that?" And I don't even think he had been made up yet as a champion in England.
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know that. I mean, that's if you get that reaction from me, that's a good thing. And so I took a whole bunch of pictures of him, and I kind of stalked Jeff and was walking around looking at the dog, and I'm like, "Oh my God, that is such a beautiful dog." And he was full of himself, but that's the way Kerrys are. I mean, I loved everything about him, and it's nice to see a dog, and I'm so proud. I wish I had that picture. I don't know where it is, but it's on one of my phones, and and he was probably pretty young then. So yeah, so he made a big impression on me, and I think there was a Pekingese David had who unfortunately died at 15 months, and he was a great dog. Not many people got to see him, and he his name was Bernie, and I gave him the national, I think, at 9 months, and I think he was probably one of the greatest toy dogs I ever saw. And he was a great dog, and everybody loved him. Even the people that were kind of David's detractors all loved that dog. So yeah, I think he won. I think he was top dog at the point when he passed away at 15 months.
Wow.
And it was just a tragic accident, and those are the things you deal with in the sport. You never
That's
know.
Right.
You never know what's going to happen with dogs.
That's right.
So I think those are two of the most impression making dogs I've ever seen and or touched. So
okay, and you had some great assignments over your career. What ones stand out?
Wow. Well, I am proud. And I think this is true. And if I'm not, somebody can correct me. I think I'm the only person to have ever judged the junior showmanship finals at Westminster, Crufts, and the World Dog Show.
Oh, wow.
I think I'm the only one. So I'm kind of proud of that, because I that's where I started. And, I think juniors is a great gateway into the sport, and it teaches kids much more than just handling. It teaches them sportsmanship. It teaches them how to be a young adult and interact with people. And so I think it has great value to the sport. And I mean, that's really one of my big highlights, those three all combined together. I mean, one by itself would be great, but to do all three. And then I've judged a group at the Garden. I did the toy group there, put a Shih Tzu up from Canada, I think, right in Canada, so by Wendy Paquette and Richard. So that was a beautiful dog, and that was a great group for me to do. But I've been lucky. I've judged at a lot of the big shows. I've done European. I've judged I think I've judged in about 40 countries now. So
Wow.
yeah, it's been really, the sport's been good to me, and I don't take it for granted, because I think you have to just be humble when you judge and be nice to the people. That's the biggest thing. And then the rest will come if you're doing a good job.
How did the job for Fox Sports come about? Because you become like a mainstay at our February.
Yeah,
well, now it's back to February. So
that's been fun. Originally, it started with so Tom Bradley and David Helming approached me to interview with Fox, and I think they had quite a few candidates and a lot of very well respected people, and it's a hard job if you do that kind of live commentary, because you have to be able to think. You have to have a broad enough knowledge to be able to talk about all these breeds without saying anything incorrect, because we're all passionate, and as soon as you say one little thing off, they're a little hostile. The natives get a little restless, and I apologize. And if I or any of my co-hosts say something that can go a little off, but they were really good. So I interviewed with them, and then I had to do an interview with Fox. And I think my test was if I could say Sholo Exquently. So I think that was the big test from the Fox guy, because I think he asked everybody that. So so I did that interview, and then I started on daytime. They did it was National Geographic then.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and the first day, Paula Nichol, the way they had it originally was it was one person, which was Paula with the Fox host, and then I was going to do the second day. And the first day they decided to put me on with Paula instead, and so it was kind of right into the fire, and it went really well. And then I did my day by myself, and then it just went from there, and they had me do nighttime after that, and then I went back to daytime for a little bit, and now I'm back to nighttime. So yeah, and they're different formats. The daytime's is not as regimented, obviously, because you're not just what's coming in at night. Daytime, we kind of just flip around to different rings, but the nighttime is really hard, because if you want to get a point across, you have about 23 seconds. So you have to be very concise. You can't get too far into the weeds about something you're saying, and yeah, it's a real rapid fire, and you never know what the co-host is going to say to you, so you got to be prepared for anything.
You make it look smooth out there, I'll tell you. So
yeah, you get better as you go. I think this year really went well with the
broadcast. Yeah, it was very exciting.
I thought it was really smooth. We went down to 2 people this year, and because unfortunately Valerie, who did it with me last year, she wanted to show her dog. So it's a hazard of the trade.
That happens.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest with you, they approached me at one point when you moved to nighttime. They approached me about daytime.
Yeah.
That one year, and I already had dogs entered. So I'm like,
yeah, that's the thing. So it was easy for me, because I don't show my dogs much, so I just bring them out and finish them, and then they're done. So it was an easy commitment for me.
Well, you've become a mainstay and a face, so for that show, which is great.
Yeah, it's a responsibility, because you want to the breeders and exhibitors have to understand that what we're really doing is educating the millions that are watching that aren't breeders about even just getting a dog. So we try to bring them in, and you try to give them little temperament types of different dogs, so they understand what's appropriate for where you live and what type of environment you can provide. And and then there's things that happen, whether a person grabs a terrier's tail. To us, it means nothing, but to the general public, it seems like something that's aggressive and not acceptable. So it's my job to explain those things away. Why an Afghan has hip bones sticking out. I hate that every year I feel like I'm obligated to say it, because it's the first dog every time. But people don't understand. Yeah. They think, oh, there's this skinny dog, and that's the first dog.
Front of the line.
It has nothing to, they're perfectly conditioned. But, I have to think about that as a commentator. I have to kind of get ahead of what the public is seeing, so that I can dissuade them from thinking anything is wrong within our sport when it's not,
Negative, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think the average person realizes the work that you put into that, because that is a lot of work. Like, even when I've done little things up here, I'm sure it's not even half the work that you have to do for what you do. It's a lot of work to be prepared for those type of situations, because you're thrown into the fire. It's every situation. Who knows what your co-host is going to ask you or what's going to happen? So
You have no idea. And simple things. It's the simplest things, like one dog's red, one dog's orange, and they're in the same group, and it's the same color. And I don't want to disrespect one breed by calling one a chocolate when it's brown. And,
right.
There's all these little nuances that to the general public, it's just that's the color it is, and they don't really care. But to you and I, red and orange are two different things. even though it's the same, looks the same, it's a different color. So it's all that stuff. I told my co-host, I said, never ask me a color because you can, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And I judge a lot of these breeds now, but it's still, it's so important to respect the breeders that have put all this time in, and you don't want to say something a little off. So
yeah, and it's a lot of pressure knowing how many people are watching you. So.
Yeah, believe me, they'll let you know if they didn't like what you said. Trust me.
Oh, yeah.
So I did pretty good this year. I did pretty good. I didn't get many, so that was really good. I was proud of myself.
I didn't realize you get that kind of. I guess that's not really fan mail.
You get it through Instagram, Facebook, email, phone calls. Yeah, you get it. You get it all, and that's why you really have to prepare yourself, because God, if you I don't want it to fall back on Westminster either, because we all care so much about the sport, the integrity of it, all the hard work these breeders put in. So I never want to talk about the negatives in a breed. I don't, that's just not the point here. The point is to educate the public and sometimes give other dog show people that know nothing about a certain group or breed some things to learn from.
Yeah.
It's an educational process for everybody, but it doesn't.
No question. And those things do happen.
Yeah.
It's amazing how impactful. I remember being a youngster and watching at the dog show and watching the terrier group and listening to someone talk about the terriers. And that made me interested in pursuing terriers. And I was never a terrier person. I never even would say I am a terrier person, but I was interested at a point where I did learn about Airedales and wires. I remember going to Fisher to learn about those things.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't work for Bobby. I would just bend his ear all the time.
Right. It's those little things that you learn, when people, the generic dog person, or even sometimes some of our judges say, oh, that's the terrible terrier movement. It's like, well, yeah, but that's correct in a small subset that are supposed to have a short upper arm, and so you never try to pin things down that are, I hate when people say stuff like that, like, oh, that's terrier movement. Really? Because there's a lot of different terrier movements. So you can't just say one thing's generic. You can't even say a dog is square from the same spot. Because when you learn all these standard squares measured from, I should count it one day and see how many different places, root of tail, buttocks, all these different areas, pointed chest, shoulder, it's all different. So you can't be so generic in any description anymore.
Do you have are you on the terrier group now? Are you done the terriers?
I have about 7 or 8 of them. Yeah.
7?
Yeah, that's the one I'm going to finish next. I think I'm going to.
Oh, good. That'll be fun.
Work into, and so that would be my 5th group then. But that'll.
Are you going to carry on? Are you going to go all the way?
I don't know. We'll see.
It's a tough call.
Yeah, it's as you get older, it's hard to do the interviews. I keep lowering my number of breeds each time because it's just you have so much in your head, and then it's hard. And I don't want to rush into breeds. While I've shown a lot of breeds and a lot of groups, once you get out of your first, I would say 2 groups, then you have a couple in each group that you do know pretty well, but you need to learn a lot more. And so I think I owe it to the sport to, kind of go slow now. There's terrier breeds that I feel very comfortable with, and there's some that we didn't show a lot of. Each terrier handler had kind of their group of breeds that they showed. And then, Birgit had some other breeds that she showed, and Clay had some that he showed that none of the other two, so that we didn't learn them all. I certainly watched more because I was in that group more.
And our lifetime experience would probably make you, you would never look like you didn't know what you were doing because of your lifetime experience, but you want to know the nuances of each before you put a stamp there.
And it takes a while to get that down pat. You have to go back to your mentors that you can rely on to teach you, and watch some dogs together and ask them about what the differences are. And, it's really important. I don't want to screw up anything. They actually gave me an invitation for a group, and they wanted me to take the whole hound group when they had, that was the Ed Bivin.
Yeah, I remember those.
Dr. Smith panel. And I did do it, but I refused the entire hound group because there were breeds I never showed and I didn't know anything about. So what I did is I asked them if I could take breeds from different groups that I showed. So I took breeds from, I think, six of the groups, and said, these I feel really comfortable with, so I'm not going to embarrass you by giving me this invitation. And, so I felt comfortable with that because they were breeds I showed a lot of. So I had very good experience with them. And I think that worked well because I don't know that getting the whole group that way. I still had to do the interview and everything. So that, I think people that hear these things happen, they don't know that everybody's supposed to do an interview. Even this new system where they're inviting people to advance and get more breeds than you typically can, it's still done the same way with an interview.
Right. Still the same process.
Yeah, you can get past a little, I think, of the educational issue a little faster. So.
Yeah.
But I think those people that are getting those invitations are, certainly some of our great judges and well studied. And, I'm sure there's some that are not getting it that really deserve it too. But I think in general it's working because, we don't have many all-arounders.
Yeah, and they're all starting to either retire or move on. So
it's sad. So we gotta. But I don't know if I'll do that. That's a lot. That's a lot more work. So, but I said maybe they'll give me my last interview through the Westminster commentary. And can she just take like one night of show and give me that? Let me pass my
exactly. That makes sense. Just show them a tape.
Yeah, just say here's my interview. If there's anything wrong, don't pass me on that breed. It's good to go. So.
How would you, if a young person came up to you and said they wanted to, they wanted a career in dogs, how would you advise them, or what would you at least give them the first step?
I think it's a long process. I think starting in juniors is a good thing, or showing your own breed in your breed and staying with that is fine. I think if you want to handle dogs, you should apprentice for quite a while. And maybe with 2 or 3 different people or one. You can certainly learn, but you can learn from a lot of people. And things you learn from one may not be, no handler is perfect. And there's things you can learn from some. I know some were great handlers and great trainers, but maybe not the best business person, And I think an education helps with your business background because there's a lot of handlers they're so successful they can't retire. Because they've never invested, they've never saved, they don't even have health insurance. It's kind of scary, the positions you can be in traveling and you don't have insurance. And so I think there's an aspect of business that has to be applied if you're going to be a handler. But if you just want to be a breeder owner handler, that's good too. And, there's all these different venues you can compete and stay in the sport. And, there's performance, there's, everything now. We have so many different events that they can compete in. So
it's true.
But I think if you're going to handle, you should learn business. You should go to school. You should get an education to have something to fall back on because you can be injured, and also learn from a couple different handlers as well to really educate yourself and learn a lot of breeds because you're going to get thrown in that position sometime where, if you specialize in toys, somebody's going to eventually say, hey, take this dog in for me. And, you might be surprised how much you enjoy a different group. which
No
is what I
question.
found.
And I think the comment you made about a businessman, and that was always, I wish I'd gone to work for a more business oriented handler as well, because I think I eventually figured it out, but it would have been easier if I had have.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I know the people I work for, some were business people and some were not, and you could see the difference in their lives at home and how they had to manage themselves privately. Because
Right.
I think the business part of it, on both sides, for your own income, and then also the interaction with the clients, because some of the best business people were not the best public relations people. I mean, and you should learn that too. I don't think, I think if you work for a great handler that's, one of the more aggressive bully types, maybe go work for somebody else that has a little more sensibility and learn that role, and, see the side where you don't have, because you can be competitive and still not be,
No, for sure. Because there's proof all over the country of that.
Yeah, there's some great people out there, and I don't know if we have as many bullies, those real hardcore handlers like we used to have.
Yeah, I think time has passed that.
Yeah, I think the rules don't allow for that as much anymore.
Right.
I think, social media, you can't act the way some of the handlers did back in the day. So
when I was a kid, I remember some good interactions at dog shows that were exciting to watch, but not to be involved in.
Right. Yeah. So, none of that would fly today. Even with our most prominent handlers, it would never.
Yeah. I just think that whole style has changed. There's just those people aren't around anymore. They've evolved into what we are now. So.
Yeah, and I think the idea of politics in the sport, I just don't think it's there as much. Maybe the judges are just I would say 90%, maybe even 95% of our judges are straight up honest. They're just trying to do a good job. Maybe they don't do a good job. Maybe I don't do a good job, but they're all trying. Because I sit in the lunchrooms with these people and they talk about a dog they love. Maybe I don't love it, but they like the dog, and it's not for any reason other than in their eye, it's a good dog. So what's wrong with that? I mean,
well, exactly.
If people like a different dog, well, good.
And but being in such a subjective sport, it's always going to happen. People are going to see these things that aren't happening that they think are happening.
Right.
It's like canine figure skating,
Yeah, it was interesting. There's a lady who shows a lot of dachshunds, and she doesn't do very well under me typically. So I did this specialty, and she won every set of points, every variety. There was nothing for anyone else because she had the best dogs. And the person at the end who got beat, I think she lost like 3 reserves to this woman. And the lady says, well, I guess you got his number, don't you? What did you do? And the lady goes, you have no idea. She said, these are the first points I've ever won in his entire career of judging. And it was true. Yeah. It's just what happens, and I'm sure to the outsider, everybody thought, oh, he loves her and it's one of his friends or something. And she's just saying, like, what's happening? I've never won under you before. So, I wish people just take a step back and realize it's much more honest than they think. Maybe the judging isn't going well, but everybody has their talents, and everybody's stronger in some breeds than others. I know there's toy breeds that I showed so many of. To this day, I think it's one of the hardest breeds for me to get through. And I don't know why, because I know the breed, but I just never feel good doing it. And I've done their national 3 times or 2 times. So it's just frustrating and everybody has that. Everybody has those breeds. Mrs. Clark, she never understood Great Dane.
We just don't let on. That's all we're out there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when she gave me, I had this very famous Great Dane, and Mrs. Clark right before she died, gave me a best in show. And she goes, I think it's a good dog, but I don't really know. I've never understood this breed. And to me, a Great Dane's kind of a simple breed. And to have Mrs. Clark admit at the end of her judging career that here's still a breed that she showed a lot of. I mean, she and Janie showed a lot of Great Danes and things, and she didn't get it to that day. And that's after 50 years of judging. So.
Yeah, and look at where we all thought she was, and she could still admit that she wasn't
she was straight
strong.
up about it. She's like, I still don't get this breed. but she said, I think it's nice. There you go. I'll take it. But that's how judges are built.
Sure.
There's some we're better at than others. There's some we can do in our sleep, and it's not even a question. And others, it's work.
Yeah. One more question. What's next for Jason?
Ooh. I don't know. I'm involved in a lot of clubs. I was the president of the Great Dane Club of America. I'm still on their board. I'm on the board of the Pekingese Club of America. I'm a member of some all-breed clubs. So, I enjoy the club work. I became a delegate last year, and I'm on the rules committee.
I should have worded that different. What's left for Jason?
I don't know. I mean, I think, I joined, I'm one of the board members of Show Safe. So that's a new nonprofit that I'm really proud of, that's doing a lot of work educating the youth in the sport, just how to be better people, how to be their own advocate and provide safety for themselves. And then we have a lot of new programs we're developing to educate clubs on how to have a safe space at a show, how to handle issues. We've had some things come up that are unfortunate in our sport that we're trying to educate clubs about how to provide safety at a sport. And, and that organization, Show Safe, also offers aftercare too. So somebody that has been a victim of any kind of abuse can call us, and we'll get them set up with a counselor, and we pay for that. So we kind of modeled it after Take the Lead, but for a different subset. And, ultimately what we'd love to say is that we're not providing any help for abuse victims anymore, and that it's all going towards education. We just did a great juniors program. We had 19 kids. We did a little handling seminar, so we kind of tricked them and said there's pizza, and we did a handling seminar. It was Carissa, myself, and Sophia Rogers. And then we took them into a classroom, and we talked about how to be good people and what it means as a little kid we kind of flipped everything on their head and told them about, what would you do if somebody was mean to your dog or did something wrong to your dog? And they'd say, oh, well, we'd tell our parents, we'd ask the person to stop. And we go, okay, so how about if somebody was doing something wrong to you? What would you do? And so it immediately was like, oh, well, I do the same thing I do for my dog. And it was great to see it. The youngest kids, and we never broached any dark subjects. And the youngest kids were so responsive to it. And they're the best answers. Yeah, it was really nice. So, so that's
our website. They can someone can get a hold of you if they want to.
It's showsafe.org.
Showsafe.org. I'll get Doc to put that up there. Showsafe.org.
Yeah. And it's really good. And we're the first program we have for the clubs is the juniors program, which I think is really good. And we had the club members from Louisville who allowed us to present it there and gave us the space to do it. And they were really impressed. And, it was so great to see these kids open up and have really good ideas about what it means to be your own advocate. And, we talked about adult ideas in a way that they understood. And maybe it just rings a bell sometimes if something would happen to them. And like, oh, well, I wouldn't let that happen to my dog. So why would I let somebody, mistreat me? And so it was really good and never scared them away. They were actually really engaged. So it was
a great way to approach it, because we all think that way with our dogs. So why not think that way with ourselves?
Yeah,
so that's a great way to approach it.
Carissa put that program together, and it was brilliant.
Oh, she's a smart cookie, that girl.
Yeah, so it was really brilliant to watch them. And Carissa was so good with the kids, and I sat there and followed in when I could, but she was so great and so inspiring to them.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Well, thank you, Jason. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
I know you're a busy guy, so I was grateful that you did this.
Sure.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Yep.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for taking time out in your busy schedule, because you are a busy guy, that's for sure. If you like what you saw here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe button, and we'll see you somewhere down the road. And don't forget, this is brought to you by Canine Chronicle TV and Pro Plan.